Hello, everyone. I say hello to everyone who accidentally to my channel. This is a channel for myself. I want to learn English because I am a Chinese tutor, but I still have some students who can only speak English. So I want to improve my English, and I'm learning a course about childhood education and care. So I want to read classical books. I I believe reading is the best way to learn languages, no matter English, Chinese, or other languages. Now let's begin. I have to say, I began once, I think 12 days ago, when I made a Chinese reading channel for my students. Then this one for myself, I want to read a long time, not only 10 minutes. So I learned this is a little bit hard for myself, but I will try my best. This is the first one is A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. 1. Sarah. Once on a dark winter day, when the yellow fog hung so thick and heavily in the streets of London that the lamps were lighted and with gas as they do at night, and the odd-looking little girl sat in a cab with her father and was driven rather big thoroughfares. Sorry, I want to say something. If you if if you believe this method of learning languages and accidentally come to my channel, if you like it, we can learn together. We can read together. If you have the book, you can read from your book. If you don't have book, you can just look at the screen and read with me. Um, my English is not good. This is why I learned it. Uh, so, for this point, I have to say I'm sorry, but I hope you can keep your learning, no matter follow my video or others. Thank you. She sat with her feet tucked under her and leaned against her father, who held her in his arm as she stared out of the window at the passing people with a queer, old-fashioned thoughtfulness in her big eyes. She was such a little girl that one did not expect to see such a look on her small face. It would have been an old look, and Sarah Crewe was only 7. The fact was, however, that she was always dreaming and thinking out things, and could not herself remember any time when she had not been thinking things about grown-up people and the world they belonged to. She felt as if she had lived a long, long time. At this moment, she was remembering the voyage she had just made from Bombay with her father, Captain Crewe, of the big ship, of the lascars passing silently to and fro on it, of the children playing about on the hot desk, and of some young officer's wife who used to try to make her talk to them, and laugh at the things she said. Principally, she was thinking of what a queer thing it was that at one time one was in India in the blazing sun, and then in the middle of ocean, and then driving in a strange vehicle through strange streets, where the lady was as dark as the night. She found this so puzzling that she moved closer to her father. "Papa," she said in a low, mysterious little voice, which was which was some which was awesome, uh, almost almost a whistle, a whisper, almost almost a whisper. "Papa, what is it? What is it, darling?" Captain Crewe answered, holding her closer and looking down into her face. "What is Sarah thinking of?" "Is this the place?" Sarah whispered, cuddling still closer to him. "Is it, Papa?" "Yes, little Sarah, it is. We have reached it at last." And though she was only 7 years old, she knew that he felt sad when she said it. It seemed to her many years since he had begun to prepare her mind for the place, as she always called it. Her mother had died when she was born, so she had never known or missed her. Her young, handsome, rich, pining father seemed to be the only relation she had in the world. They had always played together and been fond of each other. She only knew he was rich because she had heard people say so when they thought she was not listening, and she had also heard them say that when she grown up she would be rich too. She did not know all that being rich meant. She had always lived in a beautiful bungalow and had been used to seeing many servants who made sa- salam to her and called her Miss Saab and in everything. She had and an heir who worshipped her, and she had gradually learned that people who were rich had these things. That, however, was all she knew about it. During her short life only one thing had troubled her, and that thing was the place she was to be taken to some day. The climate of India was very bad for children, and as soon as possible they were sent away from it, generally to England and to school. She had seen other children go away, and had heard their fathers and mothers talk about the letters they received from them. She had known that she would be obliged to, though sometimes her father's story of the voyage and the new country had attracted her. She had been troubled by the thought that he could not stay with her. "Couldn't you go to that place with me, Papa?" she had asked when she was 5 years old. "Couldn't you go to the school too?" "But you will not have to stay for a very long time, little Sarah," she had always said. "You will go to a nice house where there will be a lot of little girls. and you will play together, and I will send you plenty of books, and you will grow so fast that it will seem scarcely a year before you are big enough and clever enough to come back, Papa. She had liked to think of that, to keep the house for her father to ride with him and sit at the head of his table when he had dinner parties, to talk to him and read his books. That would be what she would like most in the world. And if one must go away to the place in England to attend it, she must make up her mind to go. She did not care very much for other little girls, but if she had plenty of books, she could console herself. She liked books more than anything else, and was, in fact, always inventing stories of beautiful things and telling them to herself. Sometimes she had told them to her father, and he had liked them as much as she did. Well, Papa, she said softly, if we if we are here, I suppose we must be resigned. He laughed at her old-fashioned speech and kissed her. He was really not at all resentful, though he knew he must keep that a secret. His, his quaint, his quaint little Sarah had been a great companion to him, and she felt and he felt he should be a lonely fellow when, on his return to India, he went into his bungalow knowing he need not expect to see the small figure. He went into his bungalow knowing he need not expect to see the small figure in his white frock come forward to meet him. So he held her very closely in his arm as the cab rolled into the big dull square in which stood the house, which was their destination. It was a big dull brick house, exactly like all the other in its row, but that on the front door there, there shone a brass plate on which was engraved in black letters, Miss Minchin, select, select, select seminary. Miss Minchin Select Seminary for Young Ladies. Here we are, Sarah, said Captain Crewe, as cheerful as possible. Then he lifted her out of the cab, and they mounted the steps and rang the bell. Sarah often thought for afterwards that the house was somehow exactly like Miss Minchin. It was respectable, and everything in it was ugly, and the very armchairs seemed to have hard bone in them. In the hall, I watched even the red cheeks of the moonface on the tall clock in the corner had a varnished severe varnished room into which they were ushered was covered by a carpet with a square pattern upon it. The chairs were square, and a heavy marble timepiece stood upon the heavy marble mantel. As she sat down in one of the stiff mahogany, mahogany chair. Sarah cast one of her quick looks about her. I don't like it, Papa, she said, but then I dare say soldiers, even brave ones, don't really like going into battle. Captain Crewe laughed outright. Captain Crewe laughed outright at this, and full of fun, and he never tried it off hearing Sarah's square speeches. Oh, little Sarah, he sighed, what shall I do when I have no one to say solemn things to me? No one else is as solemn as you. But why? But why do solemn things make you laugh so? Inquired, inquired, inquired Sarah. Because you are such fun when you say them, he answered, laughing still more. And then suddenly he swept her into his arms and kissed her very hard, stopping laughing all at once, and looking almost as if tears had come into his eyes, come into his eyes. It was just then that Miss Minchin entered the room. She was very like her house, Sarah felt, tall and dull, and respectable and ugly. She had large cold fishy eyes and a large cold fishy smell. It spread itself into a very large smell. When she saw Sarah and Captain Crewe, she had heard a very many desirable things of the young soldier from the recommended her school to him. Among other things, she had heard that he was a rich father who was willing to spend a great deal of money on his little daughter. It will be a great privilege to have a beautiful and promising child, Captain Crewe, she said, taking Sarah's hand and stroking it. Little Meredith, Lady Meredith had told me of her unusual cleverness. A clever child is a great treasure in an establishment like mine. Sarah stood quietly with her eyes fixed upon Miss Minchin's face. She was thinking something odd, as usual. Why does she say I am a beautiful child? She was thinking. I'm not beautiful at all. Colonel Granger's little girl, Isabel, is beautiful. She had dimples and rose-colored cheeks and long hair the color of gold. I have short black hair and green eyes. Besides which, I am a thin child and not fair in the least. I am one of the ugliest children I ever saw. She is beginning by telling a story. She was mistaken, however, in thinking she was an ugly child. She was not in the least like Isabel Granger, who had been the beauty of the regiment, but she had an odd charm of her own. She was a slim, supple creature, rather tall for her age, and had an in, and had an intense, attractive little face. Her hair was heavy and quite black and only curled at the tips. Her eyes were greenish-grey, it is true, as with long black lashes, and though she herself did not like the color of them, many other people did. Still, she was very firm in her belief that she was an ugly little girl, and she was not at all elated by Miss Minchin's flattery. Elated, 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 yeah,
Elated.
elated. I will give the elated, not, oh, no, it's go to there again. Elated. Could you go? Sorry, sorry about that. It always if I um, fix or if I control with something here, it will run away. Let me try this one. Oh, yeah, good, great. Elated by Miss Minchin's flattery, I should be telling a story if I said she was beautiful, she thought, and I should know I was telling a telling telling a story. I believe I'm as ugly as I'm as ugly as she is in my way. What did she say for that for? After she had known Miss Minchin longer, she learned why she had said it. She discovered that she said the same thing to Ma, who brought a child to her school. Sarah stood near her father and listened while he and Miss Minchin talked. She had been brought to seminary because Lady Meredith's two little girls had been, and Captain Crewe had a great respect for Lady Meredith's experiences. Sarah was to be what was known as a parlor boarder. Parlor, yeah, this is parlor. Parlor boarder. And she was to enjoy even greater privilege than parlor boarders usually did. She was to have a pretty bedroom and sitting room of her own. She was to have a pony and a carriage in place of the heir who had been her nurse in India. Not in the least anxious about her education, Captain Crewe said, with his gay laugh, as he held Sarah's hand and patted it. The difficulty will be to keep her from learning too much. She is always sitting with her little nose burrowing. She doesn't read them, Miss Minchin. She gobbles them up as if she were a little wolf instead of a little girl. She's always starving for new books to gobble, and She wants grown-up books, great, big, fat ones, French and German, as well as English, history and biography and poems. Drag her away from her books when she reads too much. Make her ride her pony in the road and go out and buy a new doll. She ought to play more with dolls. Papa, said Sarah, you see, if I went out and bought a new doll every few days, I should I should have I should have more than I could be fond of. Dolls ought to be intimate. Dolls ought to be intimate friends. Emily is going to be my intimate friends. Should be my intimate friends. Captain Crewe looked at Captain Crewe. Who is Emily? She inquired. Tell her, Sarah, Captain Crewe said, smiling. Sarah's green-grey eyes looked very solemn and quite soft as she answered. I'll check the solemn. How is it? Right, I read. Oh,
solemn,
solemn. Solemn and quite soft as she answered. She is a doll I haven't got yet, she said. She is a doll Papa is going to buy for me. We are going out together to find her. I have called her Emily. She is going to be my friend when Papa is gone. I want her to talk to about him. Miss Minchin's large fishy smile became very flattering indeed. What an original child, she said. What a darling little creature. Yes, said Captain Crewe, drawing Sarah close. She is a darling little creature. Take great care, Miss Minton. Sarah stayed with her father at his hotel for several days. In fact, she remained with him until she sailed away again to India. They went out and visited many big shops together, and bought a great many things. They bought, indeed, a great many more things than Sarah needed. But Captain Crewe was a rash, innocent young man, and wanted his little girl to have everything she admired and everything he admired himself. So between them, they collected a wardrobe much too grand for a child of 7. There were velvet dresses trimmed with costly furs, and these dresses and em- embroidered ones, and hats with great soft ostrich feathers, and ermine coats, and muffs, and boxes of tiny gloves, and handkerchiefs, and silk stockings in such abundant supplies that the polite young woman behind the counters whispered that the polite young women behind the counters whispered to each other that the old little girl with the big solemn eyes must be at least perhaps the little daughter of an Indian Raja. and at last they found Emily, but they went to a number of toy shops and looked at a great many dolls before they discovered her. I want her to look look as if she wasn't a doll really, Sarah said. I want her to look as if she listens when I talk to her. The trouble with dolls, Papa, and she put her head on one side and reflected as she sighed it. The trouble with dolls is that they never seem to hear. So they looked at so they looked at so they looked at big ones and little ones, at dolls with black eyes and dolls with blue. So they look at big ones and little ones, at dolls with black eyes and dolls with brown clothes and dolls with golden braids, dolls dressed and dolls undressed. You see, Sarah said when they were examining one who had no clothes. If, when I found her, she has no frocks, we can take her to a dressmaker and have her things made to fit. They will fit better if they are tried on. After a number of disappointments, they decided to walk looking at a shop window and let the cat pass to 2 or 3 places without even going in. When, as they were approaching a shop which was really not a very large one, Sarah suddenly started and clutched her father's arm. "Oh, Papa!" she cried. "There's Emily!" A flush had risen to her face, and there was an expression in her green-gray eyes, as if she had just recognized someone she was intimate with and fond of. "She is actually waiting there for us," she said. "Let us go in to her." "Dear me," said Captain Crewe, "I feel as if we ought to have someone to introduce us." "You must introduce me, and I will introduce you," said Sarah. "But I knew her the minute I saw her, so perhaps he knew me too." Perhaps she had known her. Very intelligent expression in her eyes when Sarah took her in her arms. She was a large doll, but not too large to carry about easily. She had naturally curling golden brown hair, which hung like a mantle about her, and her eyes were a deep clear grey-blue. Soft thick eyelashes, which were real eyelashes, and not mere painted lines. "Of course," said Sarah, looking into her face as she held her on her knees. "Of course, Papa, this is Emily." So Emily was bought and actually taken to a children's outfit shop and measured for a wardrobe as grand as Sarah's once. She had lace frocks too, and velvet and muslin ones, and hats and coats, and beautiful lace-trimmed underclothes, and gloves, and handkerchiefs, and furs. I should like her always to look as if she was a child with a good mother, said Sarah. I'm her mother, though, though I'm going to make a companion of her. Captain Crewe would really have enjoyed the shopping tremendously, but that a side thought kept tugging at his heart. This all meant that he was going to be separated from his beloved, quaint little comrade. He got out in the middle of that night and went and stood looking down at Sarah, who lay asleep with Emily in her arms. Her black hair was spread out on the pillow. Her black hair, her black hair, the pillow, and Emily's golden brown hair mingled with it. Both of them had these ruffled nightgowns, and both had long eyelashes which lay and curled up on their cheeks. Emily looked so like a real child that Captain Crewe felt glad she was there. I will check the glad or glad. 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 She, Captain Crewe felt glad she was there. She drew a big sign and pulling his mustache with a boyish expression. Hey ho, little Sarah, he said to himself. I don't believe you know how much your daddy will miss you. The next day, he took her to Miss Minchin's and left her there. She was to sail away the next morning. He explained to Miss Minchin that his solicitor, his Monsieur Baron Skipworth, had charge of his affairs in England and would give her any advice she wanted, and that they would pay the bills she sent in for Sarah's expenses. He would write to Sarah twice a week, and she was to be given every pleasure she asked for. She is a sensible little thing, and she never wants anything it isn't safe to give her, he said. Then he went with Sarah into her little sitting room, and they bade each other goodbye. Sarah sat on his knee and held the lapel of his coat in her small hands, and looking long and hard at his face. Are you learning me by heart, little Sarah? He said, stroking her hair. No, she answered. I know you by heart. You are inside my heart. And they put their arms round each other, and kissed as if they would never let each other go. When the cab drove away from the door, Sarah was sitting on the floor of her sitting room, under her chin, and her eyes following it until it had turned the corner of the square. Emily was sitting by her, and she looked after it too. When Miss Minchin sent her sister, Miss Emilia, to see what the child was doing, she found she could not open the door. "I have locked her," polite little voice from inside. "I want to be quiet by myself, if you please." "I want to be quiet by myself, if you please." Miss Amelia was fat and dumpy and stood very much sister. She was really the better natured person of the two, but she never disobeyed Miss Minchin. She went downstairs again, looking almost alarmed. "I never saw such a funny old-fashioned child, sister," she said. "She has locked herself in, and she is not making the least particle of noise. She is not making the least particle of noise. It's much better than if she kicked. It's much better than if he kicked and screamed, as some of them do," Miss Minchin answered. "I expected that a child as much spoiled as she is would set the whole house in an uproar. If ever a child was given her own way in everything, she is." "I've been opening her trunk and putting her things away," said Miss Amelia. "I never saw anything like them. Sable and ermine on her coats, and real Valenciennes lace on her underclothing. You have seen some of her clothes. What do you think of them?" "I think they are perfectly ridiculous," replied Miss Minchin sharply, "but they will look very well at the head of the line when we take the school children to church on Sunday." She had been prodded for as if she has been prodded for as if she were a little princess. And upstairs in the locked room, sat on the floor, and stared at the corner round which the cab had disappeared. While Captain Crewe looked forward, waving and kissing his hand, as if he could not bear to stop. Chapter 2. A French Lesson. When Sarah entered the schoolroom the next morning, everybody looked at her with wide, interested eyes. Badly pupil, from Lavinia Herbert, who was nearly 13 and felt quite grown up, to Lottie Lyne, who was only just 4 and the baby of the school, had heard a great deal about her. They knew very certainly that she was Miss Minchin's show pupil, and was considered a credit to the establishment. One or two of them had even caught a glimpse of her French maid, Marriott, who had arrived the evening before. Lavinia had managed to pass Sarah's room when the door was open, and had seen Marriott opening a box which had arrived late from some shop. It was full of petticoat with these frills on them. Frills and frills, she whispered to her friend Jessie as she bent over her geography. I saw her shaking them out. I heard Miss Minchin say to I heard Miss Minchin say to Miss Amelia that her clothes were so grand that they were ridiculous for a child. My mom says my mom says that children should be dressed simply. She had got one of these petticoats on now. She has got one of those petticoats on now. I saw it when she has silk stockings on, whispered Jess, bending over her geography also. And and what little feet! I never saw such little feet. Oh, sniffed Lavinia. Sniff. You check this word. Sniff.
Sniff.
Sniff means 嗤之以鼻的。Oh, sniffed Lavinia spitefully. That is the way her slippers are made. My mom says that even big feet can be made to look small if you have a clever shoemaker. I don't think she is pretty at all. Her eyes are such a queer color. She isn't pretty as other pretty people are, said Jessie, stealing a glance across the room. But she makes you want to look at her again. She has tremendously long eyelashes, but her eyes are almost green. Sarah was sitting quietly in her seat, waiting to be told what to do. She had been placed near Miss Minchin's desk. She was not abashed, abashed, abashed. She was not abashed at all by the many pair of eyes watching her. She was interested and looking back quietly at the children who look at her. She wondered what they were thinking of, and if they liked Miss Minchin. And she wondered what they were thinking of, if they liked Miss Minchin, and if they cared for the Dysons, and if any of them had a papa at all like her own. She had had a long talk with Emily about her papa that morning. She is on the sea now, Emily, she had sighed. We must be very great friends to each other and tell each other things, Emily. Look at me. You have the nicest nest. Nice. You have the nicest eyes I ever saw, but I wish you could speak. She was a child, full of imagining and full of imagining and whimsical thought, and one of her fancy was that there would be a great deal of comfort in even pretending that Emily was alive and really heard and understood. After after Marriott had dressed her in her dark blue schoolroom frock and tied her hair with a dark blue ribbon, she went to Emily, who sat in a chair of her own, and gave her a look. You can read that. You can read that while I'm downstairs, she said, and seeing Marriott looking at her, she spoke to her with a serious little face. What I believe about dolls, she said, is that they can do things they will not tell us, let us know about. Perhaps really Emily can read and talk and walk, but she will only do it when people are out of the room. That is her secret. You see, if people knew that dolls could do things, they would make them work. So perhaps they have promised each other to keep it a secret. If you stay in the room, Emily will just sit there and stare. But if you go out, she will begin to read, perhaps, or go and look out of the window. Then, if she heard, she would just run back and jump into her chair and pretend she had been there all the time. Mary, and when she went downstairs, she told the head housemaid about how housemaid. I always don't know how to pronounce it. Oh, house, housemaid,
Housemaid. Housemaid.
housemaid,
Housemaid. Housemaid.
housemaid. Oh, how housemaid about it. But she had already begun to like this odd little girl who had such an intelligent small face and such perfect manner. She had taken care of children before who were not so polite. Before she had taken care of children before who were not so polite. Sarah was a very fine little person, and had a gentle appreciative way of saying, "If you please, Marita." "Thank you, Marita," which was very charming. Marita told the head housemaid, she thanked her as if she was thanking a lady. She said, indeed, she was very much pleased with her new little mistress and liked her place greatly. After Sarah had sat in her seat in the school, being looked at by the pupils, Miss Minchin rapped Miss Minchin rapped in a dignified manner upon her desk. "Young lady, to introduce you to your new companion. All the little girls rose in their places, and Sarah rose also. I shall expect you all to be very agreeable to Miss Crewe. She has just come to us from a great distance, in fact, from India. As soon as lessons are over, you must make each other's acquaintance. The ceremonious. The pupils bowed ceremoniously, and Sarah made a little courtesy. Made a little courtesy. Made a little courtesy, and then they sat down and looked at each other again. Sarah, said Miss Minchin in her schoolroom manner, come here to me. She had taken a book from the desk and was turning over its leaves. Sarah went to her politely. As your papa has engaged a friend maid, As your papa has engaged a French maid for you, she began, I conclude that she wishes you to make a special study of French language. Sarah felt a little awkward. I think she engaged her, she said, because he thought I would like her, Miss Minchin. I think he engaged her, she said, because he thought I would like her, Miss Minchin. I'm afraid, said slightly sour smell, that you have been a very spoiled little girl, and always imagine that things are done because you like them. My impression is that your papa, my impression, my impression, my impression is that your papa wished you to learn French. If Sarah had been older or less punctilious about being quite polite to people, she could have explained herself in a very few words. But as it was, she felt a flush rising on her cheeks. Miss Minchin was a very severe and imposing person. Imposing, severe, 强迫人的 severe an imposing person, and she seemed so absolutely sure that Sarah knew nothing whatever of French that she felt as if it would be almost rude to correct her. The truth was that Sarah could not remember the time when she had not seemed to know French. Her father had often spoken it to her when she had been a baby. Her mother had been a French woman, and Captain Crewe had loved her language. So it happened that Sarah had always heard and been familiar with it. That's it. Today That's for today. Tomorrow we'll begin from here. Let's see which this is the 26 pages.